and welcome to Yoga Over 50, coming from Blue Point Yoga Center in Durham. My name is Lynn. Would just be settled in a seated position for a change. So make yourself comfortable. If you want to lie down, that's okay too, because we are going to lie down in a little bit. But if you're seated, sit a little forward on the sits bones so that you can have your butt sticking out behind you a bit, so that you have the little inward curve at the waist part of the spine. And just turn to the side for a moment for that. Yeah, so that you can sit up. And I notice that as I sit up, when I start out sitting, my shoulders tend to be a little ahead of my hips. And then as I sit there for a while, the muscles at the front of the hips start to let go of their habitual tensions, and my shoulders can start to come back over my hips for a more upright spine, which is pretty much what we're looking for. And with a little inward curve at the waist part of the spine, that's different for everybody. It looks different for everybody. So just feel for the posture that is a neutral spinal position for you. Turn the palms up for a moment with the arms out to the side and feel the breath across the shoulders, and leave that breath there as you put your hands back down, resting the hands wherever allows the shoulders to just fall away from the ears and allows the elbows to hang close to the sides of the body, both side to side and also front to back. If you find that your elbows are reaching forward rather than resting at the side of your body, it tends to draw the shoulders forward. And it's such a common position in everyday activities to be reaching forward with the arms. So feel the weight into the front of the sits bones. Feel the weight into whatever parts of your legs and your feet might be touching the floor. Let your eyes close or your gaze be unfocused. Draw your attention inward. Make sure that while you're sitting here, that you're relaxed through the belly, especially through the lower part of the abdomen. So if you put your hands below your navel, you can feel your belly push out against your hand as you breathe in and draw back as you breathe out. Sometimes when I first sit down, I've somehow got my lower belly kind of tensed up, so I don't feel that. I have to consciously relax it. And relax it around the back of the hips as well. A full breath uses the whole torso, not just the front of the body, but the sides and the back as well. Just let your breath go easily in and out. See if you can feel your spine gradually straighten as you sit here in a quiet and centered position. And let's do a little warm up here, and then we'll do a little more warm up on the back. So return to your unobserved breathing pattern, but direct your attention back to your breath at any time during class that you need a little reset, a little calming influence. So let's, on an inhale, scoop the palms out to the side and up just so far as they go without creating any feeling of impingement in your shoulder. And then turn the palms and press down on an exhale. And we'll repeat that a couple of times. And reach both arms up overhead with the palms facing in, or they could be out in a wide V, that's fine too. Stretch on both sides, so length on both sides, but without kicking the ribs out to the front. So just straight up, lengthen the back of the neck. The head is still free to swivel or nod up and down, bobbing from the top of the spine. And then we'll just take a little sway over to the left, stretching on the right side of the body, keeping the right shoulder and the right arm back in line with the torso. So maybe not a very big stretch here, as if you were going up and over something on your left side. And inhale to be long in the center again. And then exhale to tip over a little bit toward the right, stretching out the left side, keeping the left shoulder and the left arm back in line with the rest of the torso. And inhaling straight up overhead. And then a very easy twist to the left. So just turning gently, rotating the spine, long spine all throughout this motion. Just leave the arms out of it. No need to pull around at all, just using the torso muscles to make this twist. Breathing yourself a little taller on the inhale and maybe creating a little more ease on the exhale. You can turn your head a little extra to look back toward the left shoulder. And then inhale to bring the arms back overhead. And then exhale to turn toward your right. One arm just falls wherever it may in front and one behind. You tent the fingers a little bit, not to push, but just to remind yourself to have a tall spine here. When you breathe in, become a little taller. When you breathe out, find a little more ease in this twisted position. And once again, the head can turn a bit extra to look back over the right shoulder here. And we'll inhale the arms back overhead and come back to the center and let the arms fall down. You can just put your hands on your knees and we'll do a little modified cat and cow in a seated position. So on an exhale, draw up the belly muscles and flatten the small of the back. And on the inhale, we'll go the other way, tipping the tailbone to the back, exaggerating the curve at the small of the back. And to the side so you can see that a little better. So just a small motion at first. If you have one hand on the belly and the other on the back, you can feel flattening of the back on the exhale and the drawing in of the belly muscles and the belly pooching out and an exaggeration of the curve. I switch my hands, maybe you can see better as you roll the other way on the inhale. So just kind of shifting the weight back and forth, small motion using the muscles that are around the lower part of your pelvis to make this movement. And then we could bring the hands out onto the knees and create a little more of a back bend, kind of arching forward. So lengthening along the top of the chest, along the breastbone, really sticking the butt out behind you, exaggerating the curve at the waist part of the spine, but curving the spine all the way up and maybe even lifting the chin a little bit to look up toward the line between the wall and the ceiling, and then gather the belly muscles to sit yourself back up again, roll the pelvis a little bit to flatten the back. We're not really creating a big arch in the back, toward the back here, protecting the spine in that way. And then we'll go forward again and back on the exhale. And then we'll go forward again, and this time we're going to stir around. So we're going to lean out over the left knee and then come back, let the shoulders come a little behind the hips and out over the right knee, all the while keeping this kind of cow-shaped back, stretching out. And then we'll go back around past the right knee and back behind the hips and out over the left knee, reaching out toward the front and then gathering the belly muscles to sit back upright again. And now let's recross the legs. So now the other leg is in front, whichever one is not the way you sat down originally. And we'll do that same thing here. So making a cow back, so opening the front of the spine along its whole length and then rolling out over the left knee and back behind and out over the right knee. Probably feels a little bit different now that you've got a different leg in the front or on top. And we'll go back around the way we came and out over the left knee and back to the center and sit upright again. Okay, all right, now let's lie down so that we've got room to move the legs around a little more. So my aim for today is things having to do with tree pose. So let's lie down and, oops, ouch. Let's just stretch out long. Actually, let's give a little exercise, just give a little rotation here. So with the knees bent and the feet flat, because I just noticed that when I lay down after doing that stuff in the seated position, my lower back was a little cranky about that. So I think I'll try to make it a little happier first. Maybe you had the same experience. And I'm just going to draw the knees in toward the chest and give them a little squeeze in, and then use the arms to move the knees around in a circle and let that move the legs out of the hip sockets. Now it's kind of tricky because my legs kind of want to stay still in the hip sockets and just have my whole body kind of swiveling around. So I'm trying consciously to leave the back of my hips and my back side of my body on the floor while my legs swivel around. And when I move the knees in parallel, they don't so much want to do that. They want to be kind of stuck as one unit. I'm just trying to ease them up and loosen them up a little bit, because we're going to need that mobility. And then it's easier in this symmetrical way to bring the knees out apart from each other in a big circle around, going a few times around one way. And again, the legs aren't doing the work, the arms are doing the work here. And then a few times around the other way. So it's making big circles with the knees. Okie doke. And now I'm going to set the feet down on the floor and slide the heels away. Do one leg at a time, might be a little more comfortable. And then I'm going to inhale the arms up, fingertips going toward the ceiling, and then reaching back behind me toward the floor. If they don't come all the way to the floor, do not stress about that. And then exhale the arms back down to the sides and gather the left knee in toward the chest. Give it a bit of a squeeze and stretch the right heel away. And now stretch the right knee out to the outside. Already a little bit like a tree, right? And bring it across the body. Switch hands. A little bit of adduction across the midline. And back to the center, hands behind the thigh. Extend the foot to the ceiling. Exhale, fold the leg back down. Let the heel drop to the floor. Stretch the foot away, reach the arms overhead. And on the next exhale, bring the right knee into the chest, give it a bit of a squeeze. Inhale that right knee out to the side. You can stretch the left arm out on the floor with the palm facing up. Bring the right knee across the midline, switching hands, stretching the right hand out. Just leave the back of the right hip on the floor. Come back to the center with the hands behind the thighs. Stretch that right heel toward the ceiling. And exhale and draw it back in. And then let the right heel come to the floor and stretch both legs away and both arms up overhead, and then return the arms down to your sides. Okay, so we'll start sort of simulating some tree shapes here. So we could begin, you can just leave the arms out to the sides with the palms facing up. We'll slide the left heel in. Maybe your foot is around knee height or somewhere below that, just whatever seems comfortable. And give some flexion at the right ankle as if you were standing on that right foot. And now let your left knee roll out to the side. Now, if it's not feeling comfortable and secure doing that, you could give it something to land on, like a block or a book or a little pillow or something like that. Okay, so here we have more or less a standing, or a supine rather, tree pose. And you can bring your foot of your left foot right up against your right leg, if you like, as you would if you were in a standing tree pose, pressing the raised foot against the supporting leg. Keep the back of both hips on the floor. Depending on how much your hip likes to open here, that might mean that your left knee does not go down to the floor. That is perfectly all right. Don't worry about that at all. And let's just move the arms a little bit. So we'll have the upper part of the tree assume some different shapes. So we could sweep the arms up along the floor till they're overhead or maybe out in a wide V. We could take a little bit of a swaying of the upper part of the tree, opening along the right side of the body, reaching the hands over toward the left and leading out with the right foot. And then inhale to come back to the center in a symmetrical position, and then go the other way. Running into my chair legs over here. So the hands are going off to the right and pointing down and away with the left knee to stretch on the left side of the body, and then come back to the center. Exhale the arms down to the sides and then left knee back up toward the center, and then press that left foot away from you on the floor. And on the next exhale, we'll bring the right knee in toward your bum. Again, you decide how high you want that foot to come. And then with the arms out to the sides, just resting comfortably with the palms up, we'll let the right knee fall out to the right. Again, give it some place to land. If it doesn't feel safe and comfortable, just dropping out on its own. Keep the back of both hips on the floor. Give some flexion at the ankle on the left leg to keep that leg active. That also helps to keep the left hip down on the floor. And you could press your right foot into the left leg, just simulating the position of a standing tree pose here. And then let's slide the arms up along the floor to come overhead, turn the palms in toward each other. No need to raise the arms straight alongside the ears if they're more comfortable out at a bit of an angle here. And now we'll take a little stretch with a swaying palm top of the tree, moving the hands over toward the right and leading out with the left foot for a stretch along the left side of the body. So you can keep the arms and the shoulders down on the floor, and then inhale back to the center. And then exhale to move the hands over to the left and point down and out with the right knee. So you're taking a stretch on the right side of the body. And then inhale the hands back to the center and return the arms down by your sides and the knee back up to the center. And on your next exhale, draw your left knee back up to the center too. Take a few sways of the knees from side to side, and then roll yourself over to one side and pause briefly before using your arms to bring yourself up away from the floor and to a hands and knees position. So take whatever props you like, use whatever arm and hand position is workable for you. Maybe you want the hands out a little bit ahead of the shoulders. Maybe you want to be on forearms instead, in which case just be mindful of the fact that your hips are going to be a little higher than the upper part of your body, than your shoulders. So whatever works well for you, pressing into either the forearms or the hands and the wrists so that your ears are away from your shoulders and your nice square position broad across the collarbones as well as broad across the shoulder blades in the back. And we'll just take a little mobility here, rolling back with the hips over the heels, and then forward with a little opening along the breastbone, and back over the heels, and forward with a little opening along the breastbone. And one more of those. We're going to get ready for a little motion through the legs here, and back to a neutral position in hands and knees or hands and forearms, whichever you're using. Okie doke. So now let's bring the left leg back behind. So stretching it straight out behind. I've got that chair there because I'm going to use it a little later in class. That's what it's doing there. And see if you can keep yourself kind of centered here. So there's a tendency to want to sort of sway off toward the right. See if you can bring yourself back to a centered position, even though you've got this weight of this leg up in the air there. And then bend at the knee, and we're just going to give some of those knee circles. So oil it all around. We're going to need this mobility shortly. Just slowly move around one way and then the other way, still pressing through the arms, keeping your body in a centered position. And then we'll bring that knee back down and go to the other side. Stretch the right leg back behind you, leading out with the heel, the toes pointing straight down toward the floor. And then we'll bend at the knee of that right leg and give it some generous circles. Very well-controlled motion here. So we're not letting it kind of flop around, but we're using all the muscles through the hip and the torso to keep it under good control. A few times one way and a few times around the other way. And then we'll set that knee back down. Take a little break, rolling yourself hips back over the heels for a child's pose. Take a long stretch on both sides of the body from the hips up through the fingertips. And then come back up to a hands and knees or hands and forearms position. And we're going to bring the knee out to the side. I'll just turn forward for a moment so that you can see how that's happening. So we'll start with the left leg and just bring the knee out to the side. The knee stays bent. Try to keep yourself as centered as possible. And we'll let that knee come back down and go to the other side and raise the right knee out to the side. This may feel kind of awkward, so be gentle about it. Don't try to raise your leg any further than it seems to want to come up and out to the side. We'll go to the other side. So we're not really stacking the hips here. We're just raising the leg out of the hip socket. Back to the right side once more, and let that back down. And let's take another little break in child's pose. I'm going to tuck my toes this time. For some reason, my foot seems to want to cramp when I do that with my knee. And then come back up to a hands and knees position. So now we're going to do a movement with the knee coming out to the side and up toward the shoulder. So we're going to roll the hips back on an exhale into the extended child's pose. And on the inhale, roll forward and bring the left knee up off the floor, out to the side and up toward the left elbow. And then we'll set it back down and sink the hips back over the heels. And then we'll do that on the right side. So inhaling forward, the right knee comes out to the side and then comes up toward the right shoulder and then back down. And we'll just do a few more of those. Now this is a very controlled, slow movement of the leg. So don't fling your leg forward. Bring it up slowly and with good control. Doesn't have to come anywhere near your shoulder or your elbow. Just give it a little try in that direction. And we'll do one more on the right to even things out. And set the knee back down and take a little break in child's pose. You can let your head rest. Could be on your stacked hands if your head doesn't readily come down to the floor. And bring the arms back along your sides, or you could cross the lower arms across the small of your back with the palms facing up, making yourself into a little snail shell sort of child's pose here. And take a few breaths. And then bring the hands back forward, come back up to hands and knees. We're going to come back to a seated position. Just wanted to get the hips and the legs kind of warmed up before we did some things in a seated position that requires a little flexibility there. So let's sit in staff pose. So the legs are going to stick straight out to the front, but they don't have to stick out with the knees totally straight. So if you find a little bend to the knees allows you to have a little inward curve of the spine more easily for an upright position without rounding your back, then please take advantage of that opportunity and even prop the legs up a little bit to have that little bit of curve. If you dig in your heels and just give a little traction back toward your body, it'll flex the knees a little bit and you'll feel your pelvis roll in order to create that little inward curve at the waist part of the spine that we look for in a tall mountain spine. And we've got the mountain spine here in staff pose. So now what we're going to do is to make this into a bent over tree. So let's slide the left foot up toward your body, maybe about up to knee height, but it's going to depend on how flexible you feel about bringing your thigh close to your torso here. Keep the spine tall here. And now let's let that left knee roll out to the side. Now, once again, if this feels kind of dangerous to the left knee, you could put something under it to fill up the space between the knee and the floor so that it feels safe to come out there. So we've got the left knee against the inside of the right knee or thigh or possibly shin. Any of those would be okay. Swivel around a moment, might be easier to see going this way. So we'll sit tall here, tent the hands behind you, and if there is any room left for tipping forward, you could do that. But again, we're tipping from the hips, not rounding the back. So keep stretching the spine long here, keep maintaining that inward curve at the waist part of the spine. Give a little flexion to that right foot as if you were standing on it on the floor. And then inhale back up again. And bring, no, we won't bring the knee up to the side. We'll take a little twist here. So inhale the arms up overhead and exhale and turn toward your bent knee. That's toward the left. Just let one arm fall in front and one behind. Think taller on the inhale. Think a little more ease on the exhale. Keep that right leg active. So it's kind of pressing into the floor and leading out with the heel, and also pressing the left foot against the right leg. And then inhale back to the center. And let's turn the other way, so away from the bent knee. Just let the hands fall. Don't use the arms to pull yourself around in any way. Taller on the inhale. A little more ease of the twist on the exhale. And then inhale back to the center and let the arms come down and straighten the left leg. Maybe give a little jog up and down to the knees here. Relax the legs a little bit. And then we'll do that on the other side. So we'll draw the right knee in toward the chest. And then let the right knee fall out to the side. You might find it feeling quite different from one side to the other. So I feel a bit more stress through my left hip when my right knee falls out to the side. So I'm very consciously trying to sit with equal weight into both sits bones and equal length on both sides of the body, and not letting the asymmetry of the legs here get translated into an asymmetry of the upper body. So we'll lead out with the heel of the left foot, keeping that leg active. Press the right foot into the side of the left leg, wherever your right foot happens to be. It could be up near the groin, it could be down near the knee, it could be down on the shin. Any of those will be fine. And again, give something under your right knee if that will help it feel more at ease here. We'll tent the fingers behind and look for, see if there's any space. So just checking it out. If there is no space, to tip forward from the hips here, not rounding the back, and don't tip. You just have plenty of stretch sitting right up straight. If there is a little room, give a little pressure to the fingers and just a little bit of a tip, and then come back upright again. And now we'll inhale the arms overhead, and on an exhale, turn toward the bent knee, toward the right, letting one arm fall in front and one behind. Your head can turn a bit extra. Keep the legs active, keep pressing out through the left heel here. Breathe in for a taller spine, breathe out for a little more ease of the twist. Not necessarily more twist, but a little more ease of movement of the ribs and the muscles of the torso. And inhale the arms back overhead through the center, and then turn the other way toward the left. One arm falls in front and one behind. The core muscles are doing all the turning here, not the arms. You can draw a little bit back with the back shoulder, the left shoulder, however. Keep both of the legs active, the right foot pressing into the left leg, the left heel leading out so the leg stays active. And then on an inhale, the arms overhead, back to the center, and stretch the legs out. Move the legs out into a wide V, and take a little stretch. Tipping forward if there's any room to do so. Leave the toes pointing up toward the ceiling, a bit of flexion at the ankles so that both legs are very active here. And then we'll bring the legs back together, and we're going to come to a standing position. So whatever method works well for you. Sometimes I like to cross my legs and stand up from the floor just to remind myself that it's still possible to do that. But whatever works safely for you is a good way to get there. Okie doke. So now we're going to start in on some standing variations for tree pose here, but we'll start with the standing mountain position. So finding the joints of the hips a little in and a little down from the bony corners, and lining up the long bones of the legs and the long axis of the feet under those points. I'll stand to the side. Feeling the weight into all parts of the feet. So let your eyes close for a moment if it isn't too tippy to have your eyes closed while you're standing up, so that you can really feel the connection between your feet and the floor. Of course, that's going to be important when we're standing on only one foot. It's important standing on 2 feet too. So we'll bring the toes up off the floor and see if you can feel all of the pads of the toes pressing into the floor. So probably it's easiest to feel the big toe pad. Maybe you can also fairly easily feel the little toe pad, but what about the ones in the middle there? You sort of press them down toward the floor and then let the toes back down. Let the weight shift a little forward. You feel your legs catch you in the front. Let your weight shift back a little bit. You feel your legs catch you toward the back. Settle yourself down so that you have some weight into both the front and the back of the foot. Let your weight shift from the left to the right foot and back again a few times. And settle so that you feel as if you have equal weight into each foot. Maybe move the hips back a little bit, give a little outward traction at the heels to relax across the lower part of the spine. Turn the palms forward a moment to broaden across the front of the chest, and then let the arms relax while keeping that broadness across the chest. Think of a long line from your tailbone all the way up past your waist, past your shoulders, up through the back of the neck and out through the crown of the head. Let your eyes come open here. And let's just take a little bit of rising onto the toes and back down again. Inhaling up, the arms come overhead, woo, and back down onto the whole foot. And then up again, keeping the ankles under good control. So that's another thing we need for standing on one leg, is firm support of all the joints of the legs. We don't want the ankles to wobble, and this is a nice way to strengthen the ankles. Don't have to come up super high. Just move slowly with your breath. And then exhale back down. Okay, so let's start trying a few things with tree. So we've got lots of options here for how to do this. You can just stand out in the middle of the room, either on your mat or on the floor. Some people like to move onto something a little less cushy in order to have better balance. But you could also put yourself near a wall or even right up against a wall. Let's move that out of the way. So with the heels a little away from the wall to leave room for your bums so that you can touch the back of both hips to the wall while still having your weight centered over your feet. So you don't want to be actually leaning back into the wall. And in this case, it would be great if the back of your shoulders and the back of your head also touch the wall. You can turn the palms forward a moment, pressing the arms back into the wall, feeling the shoulder blades settle against the body. And you can do the same motion isometrically, even if you're standing away from the wall. So you could have yourself touching the wall, or you could step away from the wall just a little bit, just an inch or so that you don't actually feel the wall behind you, but it's right there. If you should start to feel tippy, that you could just lean back against it. So we want to challenge balance without falling over, right? So that's an option. Another option is to have a chair, and we'll use the chair for the foot in a moment, but you can also just use the chair, back of the chair for a little balance, just setting your hand on it. So there's merits to standing away from the wall or away from the chair and just balancing, even if you have to keep taking your foot up and down a lot. So that's kind of training the brain and the balance. But there's also merits to finding a position where you can keep yourself in the standing mountain pose and stay there for some while in order to build strength. So we'll do a little bit of each of those things. So let's start with the balance part. So choose a situation where you can keep yourself safe from falling, but where you're going to be calling on your brain and your muscles to keep you in a balanced position. So I'm going to stay on my mat. It's a little cushy, makes it a little bit harder, but not too hard. I got a nice solid floor underneath me here. Carpet is much more difficult. If you're standing on carpet, you're giving yourself a primo balance challenge already. Okay, so I'm going to shift the weight into the right foot, drawing the right hip a little toward the midline. It's going to make the left hip hike up just a little bit. Going to turn the left knee to the outside, so we've got a posture that's kind of similar to the one that we had while lying down on the floor. And I'm going to don't lock out the right knee, so don't press the knee back behind you. Leave a little ease to the knee. Leave your torso facing forward. Your knee might come quite directly out to the side, or it might be facing maybe out at a kind of an angle, kind of headed out somewhere between directly to the side and directly in front. You could stay right here. You could bring your hands to the heart or take any other position of the arms that helps you feel steady. You could leave the toe on the floor, or you could bring the leg, the left foot up onto your leg somewhere. I find it kind of handy to sort of stuff it into the inside forward part of the right thigh here. Whoa. Pick something to look at that's not going to wobble around. If it's on the floor, lower your eyes, but not your head to look down at that point. And take steady breaths here. So you're probably feeling your legs and your feet working like crazy to keep yourself steady. And keep breathing to keep yourself steady too. Sometimes I think raising my arms up overhead and lengthening the spine and making sure that the spine muscles, core muscles are keeping the torso steady is very helpful to keeping balance here. So touch your foot down when you need to, pick it back up again. Whoa. Whoa. And then when your foot feels, the foot you're standing on, that would be your right foot, feels like it's had about enough on that side, you can bring yourself back down to the standing mountain position and stand in the standing mountain position for a moment with the eyes closed, just to feel the effect of having stood on one leg for a while. And then let's do that on the other side. So shifting the weight into the left leg, trying the left hip underneath you and turning the left toes, the right toes and knee out to the side. Could be way out to the side, could be just a little bit out to the side, keeping the hips and the rest of the torso facing forward. Any position that you like with your arms, picking something to look at that's not moving around. If you like, bringing your right foot up onto the left leg. Keep thinking about having that left hip come in under your body. So of course you have to shift your weight to stand on one leg, but we don't want a big sag out to the left side here. So nice strong column on the left side of the body. Experiment with any kind of arm position that you like. Notice all the adjustments that your body is making in order to maintain balance. Keep breathing, that maintains balance too. Go for some fatigue in the standing leg. Put your foot up and down, your right foot up and down whenever you need to. This is by far my steadier side, although it's starting to go. You'll notice differences from side to side, I'm sure. And when you're done experimenting with that side, bring the right foot back down to the floor. And again, stop in the standing mountain position for a moment. Close your eyes, feel the weight into your feet, feel which parts of your feet feel like they are pressing down into the floor especially, and notice if there are differences from side to side. Okay, all right. So now choose a position where you're not going to be challenging your balance really. So it could be backed up to where your butt and perhaps also your shoulders are touching the wall. So not leaning into the wall, but just having that feedback that helps greatly with balance. And another way to do this is to use a chair or a stool or, well, it could be even a bed, although that's a little squishy, as a place to put your foot. So I'll just demonstrate that with the chair. So if you're using a chair, you're going to stand near enough the chair so that when you pick your foot up, you'll be able to set it down on the chair. Okay. So we'll bring the hands to the heart. If you're doing this against the wall, you can just follow the same directions, but you'll be just touching the back of your hips and perhaps the back of your shoulders and the back of your head to the wall. So we'll shift the weight into the right leg, draw the right hip underneath, come up onto the toe of the left foot. And then we're going to bring the foot up off the floor and start moving the knee out to the left and set the foot onto the chair, or if you are using the wall behind you, you can bring the foot against the standing leg. Okay. If you're using your foot on the chair, you can then walk your foot around to the side to the extent that your left hip is willing and happy to open to externally rotate out to the left side, but leave your right hip and your torso facing forward here. So no worries about falling over in this position, but what you can do here is concentrate on that strong column provided by the left leg and use this opportunity to really get some strength training here. So no balance worries now, but lots of opportunity for strength training of the torso and the supporting leg, and also for exploring the external rotation of the left thigh out of the left hip. And you could add a little swaying movement to the top of the tree here, like we were doing when lying down. So you could reach the arms over to the left, stretching from the right foot up through the right hand, back to the center, arms over to the right, stretching a bit on the left side of the torso, and back to the center, and let the arms come down. You can do this leaning against the wall too. Bring the hands to heart center. If you have your leg out to the side on the chair, you can walk it back around so the knee is pointing more in front of you, and then step yourself down back to the two-legged position on the floor. If you're up against the wall, just return the left foot to the floor and come back to a standing mountain position. Okay, if you're using the wall, you don't need to go anywhere. If you're using the chair, you'll need to turn around or swap the chair around here in order to have the chair on your other side. So we'll stand in the standing mountain position once again, either backed up to the wall or near the chair. And this time you're going to be raising your right foot off the floor. So shift the weight into the left foot, draw the left hip under you. Right hip comes up a little bit, come up onto the toe and the ball of the foot of the right foot. If you're against the wall, roll the leg out to the side, the right knee out to the side, and bring the foot up against the standing leg. If you're going to use the chair, bring the right knee out to the front, set your foot onto the chair, And then keeping the torso facing forward, walk your right knee out to the side to the extent that your hip allows that to happen. It's also going to depend partly on how tall your chair is. So this chair is kind of tall for me. You can see that my knee is actually above my hip here, and that makes it feel a bit different than if I had my foot up on something that was lower. You can do all different things with your arms. Bring the arms up overhead. And we're still looking for that strong column on the left side this time. So even though you're not going to fall over, you're still getting a lot of strength training on that supporting leg. And we could try a little swaying of the palm tree. So bringing the raised arms off to the right, stretching from the left foot up the left side of the body out through the left hand. And inhaling the arms back up to the center. And then swaying the palm the other direction, stretching along the right side of the body. Keep breathing, keep the shoulders and the arms in line with the torso, and back to the center, and bring the hands down to the heart. If you're against the wall, just bring the foot back to the floor. If your foot's on the chair, walk it back toward the front again, and then take the foot off the chair and come back to the standing mountain position. Now I'm just going to move the chair out of my way here. And bring the feet a little far apart and take a little loose swish. And then come to a standing mountain position. We're going to come toward the floor through down dog. And so we'll inhale the arms overhead and exhale and hinge forward from the hips. Let your hands slide down your legs, let your knees bend, keep the spine stretching long. Reach out with the hands coming to the floor, walk the hands forward and the feet back into down dog, quite a long down dog. And now we're going to repeat the thing that we did on hands and knees, with the knee coming out to the side and then up toward the shoulder. So if doing this from down dog seems like a crazy idea, just come down to hands and knees and do that again instead. Otherwise, we could on an inhale roll forward, bringing the left knee out to the side and toward the shoulder. Keep your spine long as you do that and move slowly. Don't herk forward with the knee. And then on the right side, the knee comes out to the right and up toward the elbow or the shoulder, and then back behind and back down again. And once more on the left, coming out and up toward the elbow or toward the shoulder, back down, and once more on the right, out to the side, up toward the elbow or toward the shoulder, and back down behind. Take a stretch back in down dog, or a stretch back in child's pose if you're on hands and knees, and then inhale to roll your weight forward, and exhale yourself down to the floor. If you're on hands and knees, just bend the elbows and lower yourself down into a prone position. Make a comfortable place to rest your head. You can either turn it to the side, or you can let your chin and forehead rest for the spine in a neutral position all the way up through the head and neck. And now we're just going to have a little bit of tree on the belly. So let your left knee come out to the side. So the inside of your left leg and left foot are going to be on the floor. And you can moderate this however you like. So your knee can come up quite high toward your hip. It could be much lower than that. The foot could be away from your right leg, or you could bring your foot to press against the inside of your right leg as it would in a tree pose. Just leave the right foot relaxed here. No need to pretend that you're standing on it. And we're just going to let gravity open the left hip, externally rotate at the left hip. If there's a lot of space there and this feels uncomfortable and you have a little roll of towel, you could put that under there. And we'll just take a few breaths here. Let your breath travel to any part of you that feels a little resistant. And then we'll extend that leg back out behind. So just walk it in so that your two legs are sticking out behind your hip joints here. And then let the right knee crawl out to the side. So now you're on the inside of the right leg and the inside of the right foot with a bend in the knee, a bend at the hip, and a bend at the ankle. Again, you can lift your knee up to hip level, even higher if you should be so motivated. But you could have it down a lot lower than your hip. And you could either have your right foot in pressed against your left leg, or you could have the foot away from your left leg. And allow gravity to externally rotate the right hip. Might feel quite different. There might be more or less space between your hip and the floor on this side. If it's uncomfortable, see if a little bit of padding under there, even just bunching your mat up under the space between your leg and the floor might help it relax a little better here. Let your breath travel to any parts that are resisting. And then return that leg back behind you. Bend at the knees. Take a little swish of the lower legs from side to side. Let that roll your hips from side to side. Relax the back a bit. So it is time for Shavasana in any position that you like. You're on your belly. If you'd like to stay there for Shavasana, you could do that. If you prefer to be over on your back, you could go there now. I have this chair handy, and it seems very appealing to lie on my back with the lower legs up on the chair, so I think that's what I'll do. In any case, be comfortable and then be still. If you're lying on your back, let your palms turn up toward the ceiling if you can, to let the shoulders sink into the floor. Let your weight rest heavily, whatever parts of you are on props or on the floor. Let your breath be settled, your gaze soft or your eyes closed. Be sure you're taking a full exhale and then allowing the air to rush in on the inhale rather passively. And silently. Let your breath deepen a little. Begin to bring a little motion into your fingers and your toes. While you're lying on your belly, bend at the knees so that your feet are up in the air and you can just wave your lower legs around a little bit. Excuse me, roll the hips from side to side a little. If you're on your back and your knees are bent, just let the knees sway side to side or roll around in a circle. Got your legs up on a chair, you can just bring the feet to the edge of the chair seat and then let the knees sway from side to side. Roll the hips a bit in that position. If your legs are outstretched, go ahead and bend one knee at a time to bring the knees bent and let them sway side to side. You can open and close the jaw a few times. Turn the chin toward one shoulder and another, just warming up the head and the neck, just loosening them. And then let all that swaying carry over to your side. If you're lying on your belly, you just need to be sure to get the arm on the side that you're turning onto out of the way, either down near your body or up over your head. And just roll onto one side and rest there with your eyes closed for a few breaths. And then to come up, push with your arms, your head, lag behind. Take whatever you like for a comfortable seat. If you've got your chair, you can sit in the chair even. Sit with a tall spine, shoulders relaxed away from the ears, belly relaxed so that your muscles can push in and out as you breathe. Elbows close to the sides. We'll bring the palms together and the thumbs near the breastbone. So I'm going to try Sarah's suggestion of oming more softly and see if that lets Zoom keep picking up the sound. Just an experiment. So we'll inhale first. Thank you for coming and sharing your practice with me today. Namaste.